more currently, we see essentially a recurrence of this activity. The current ruling KMT government is causing confusion and difficulty with its statements and policies. The government is sending an inaccurate message out to China and to the rest of the international community. And this inaccurate message is what I mentioned above, that somehow there are very mixed feelings in Taiwan that maybe right? And maybe it's that. Or maybe the majority of people in Taiwan identify as Chinese instead of Taiwanese. And so we see Ma Ying-jeou making statements like the ones I have up here. It's quite obvious that the conditions for unification are not ripe.
Maybe I should translate here. Ma Ying-jeou 的讲话又讲给咱即马，伊讲足明显的吼，即个要统一的时机还未成熟，还是2009年伊的讲的话。
And the same, yeah, the obvious conditions for unification are not ripe yet, not ripe yet. And so his choice of words implies that we're moving toward unification, or a desire for unification in Taiwan. But we haven't gotten there yet, he says. He's working on it, obviously. But in fact, we know that the trend is going quite the opposite way. And many of you have probably seen this. This is the chart, and I won't go over it in great detail, but if we know that the idea of maintaining the status quo and moving toward unification is this, this red line that we have going down, right? This is the red line at the bottom is the line of people who want unification immediately. It's going down. It's going down. It's not going up. Yes, the conditions are not ripe yet. Of course they're not, because they're going in the opposite direction. If you put water on this, it'll run that way. So I'm not sure if President Ma has seen this, but he might want to take a look at it and see what's going on there. And so I followed up on this with asking some of my own questions of the college students, of what they preferred. And we can see the responses from the college students. In fact, these are very much in line with other surveys that have been done in Taiwan, except for the college students I surveyed are a little more pro-independence, a little more green, I would say, than the general population. So we see here the same notion. The idea of immediate unification, only 4 people out of 941. We see the move toward, status quo at the present, move toward independence. Very strong number. And then the strongest number, in line with the rest of the public opinion, is maintain the status quo, and then we'll make a decision later. But as you see, there's very low numbers in support of any concept of unification. And that is consistent across these. And then we can see some other questions. This question I asked basically is, basically asking the question, are Taiwan and China different, right? And so we talk about the idea that Taiwan and China are so different that to talk about unification doesn't even really make any sense. And there, as you can see, there are a lot of students who agree with this argument, right? It doesn't make any sense to talk about unification because we're not the same. We're not the same country. And we have no interest in unifying with China. Most of the students have never been to China and don't really care about going there, right? So we see, again, this notion that Ma Ying-jeou is making the statement, oh, the unification, and we're moving toward it, but in fact we see resistance to it. And then I asked the question about whether Taiwan and China are one country, or one nation, essentially. And again, we see very low responses in favor of this, with most people disagreeing with it, and the biggest numbers being disagreeing and strongly disagreeing with this notion that we are the same. Right? This is a statement of both ethnic and national identity. So Ma Ying-jeou's presentation then of this idea that the conditions for unification are not ripe is being presented as a direct contrast to what we're seeing public opinion indicate. And again, this is very much in line with what we're seeing general public opinion represent as well. We can go I also did, quickly I'll go over these, there's a lot of information here, but I did some questions in my surveys. I did 6 actually, future scenarios, where I presented potential future scenarios to students and said, how would you feel about this? And we asked questions about democracy, economy, and you know, generally feelings about Taiwan's future. So one scenario I presented out of the 6 was an independent Republic of Taiwan with Beijing's acceptance. Essentially, as you see, 中国民主, you know, after China becomes democratic, the Chinese government says, okay, Taiwan, you people, you vote, and you decide what you want. And if you vote for independence, then we'll accept it. And so this was the scenario that I presented. And we looked at how the students felt about this. And as you can see, and we did this in 2 different ways. I'll just go ahead and stand up because it's. We did it by ethnic identity, meaning Taiwanese, dual, or Chinese identity, Taiwanren, Doshi, or Zhongguoren. And then later I'll show we did it by national identity as well. And as you see, very strong numbers, 371, 87.3% of Taiwanese are pleased by this. Interestingly, those who claim dual identity, Chinese and Taiwanese identity, 85% are pleased by this. And even those who claimed solely Chinese identity, say I'm only Chinese, not Taiwanese, even they, the majority of them, were pleased with the idea of an independent Taiwan. Right? That doesn't make any sense, does it? We'll go to the next one, and we'll see. Even those who, we see the same sort of numbers here about after China's democratization. These are people who claim to be in favor of unification. 79.6% of the people who claim to be in favor of unification were pleased with the idea of Taiwan becoming independent. Okay? So, I don't get it either. But we know, I mean, what this indicates, we know, is that once that threat of China doing something with independence is removed, then people say, yeah, sure, I'd like to be independent, why not? Right? That makes a lot more sense to me. And so, again, we see, we present these potential future scenarios. We see that people are pleased. We see that they have very positive feelings about the economy, the future economy, and very positive feelings about the future of democracy in Taiwan with the Republic of Taiwan. Okay, the next one I did is the opposite. And that is, we can go to the next slide, to unify with a democratic China. And I presented this one because, of course, we often hear, particularly in the United States, well, you know, there's a tension between Taiwan and China right now. But if China becomes democratic, then, of course, the people of Taiwan would be okay with unifying with China. Right? We hear that quite frequently. And so this is sort of the U.S. position, that we're waiting, anticipating China's democratization. And once China democratizes, then Taiwan will join with the great motherland, and these tensions in the Taiwan Strait will be gone. Of course, the Chinese Navy will take over, but that's okay. You know, that's not what we're worried about here. So the scenario was, if China becomes democratic and Taiwan were to unify with China, how would you feel about it? And we did the same thing here, where we had divided by Taiwanren, Doshi, and Zhongguoren, and showed the results. Now, this is showing Taiwan as a province of a democratic China, a fully voting, fully represented province of democratic China. And look how people feel. People are not pleased. Even the people who claim, of course, very small numbers, even the majority of people who claim to be Chinese, solely Chinese, are not pleased with the scenario. Most of them are angry. They have fairly good feelings about the economy, but really no good feelings about democracy whatsoever. And then we do it again by the independent status quo unification numbers. We see people are not pleased. Even, again, the people who claim they support unification, fewer, it came out just barely over 50% of them were pleased with this scenario. So they say they're pro-unification. We promote the idea that China is now a democracy and you can unify with a democratic China, and just about half of them are unhappy with that. I think that's, again, an indication that this notion of a desire for unification is inaccurate. And we look again, you know, at these numbers here, where we see that there's no scenario that I presented that that came anywhere close to the level of satisfaction of college students as the independent Taiwan. So we see very clearly an independent Taiwan is the preference of the college students. So when Ma Ying-jeou makes the statement, the time for unification is not yet ripe, he should not stop there, he should continue and say, in fact, we're going quite the opposite direction. Right? This is honesty, but he is not being honest in it.
伊结论就是讲，马英九迄阵咧讲，要统一的时机也未到，实在伊应该袂使停下，应该继续讲。事实上，这个趋势已经无去啊，伊应该讲迄句话落去。
Okay. President Ma is also referencing quite often the issue of ethnic identity, meaning Taiwanese, Chinese identity in Taiwan. For example, we can look at some of his statements. This is, this is from his speech in January of 2001. And he likes to talk about how all the people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait are related to the great emperor, the Yellow Emperor. We're all children of the Yellow Emperor. And we share a common ancestry across the strait. We're all of the same blood. Therefore, we have shared interests. This is, by the way, the ghost of Huangdi visiting Chiang Kai-shek. A lot of people hadn't seen that yet, but it was in the papers. And so, yeah.
这个都是讲马英九的演说内底讲，咱拢是皇帝子孙。啊，迄个图顶头倒这边是皇帝，啊，迄边是种介绍。
And so we can go through some more of his statements as we go through. He argues that forbearing governance and the benevolent rule are the essence of Chinese culture. He needs to read some Chinese history books, obviously, or some current description of Chinese politics. But this is promoting the idea of Taiwan as the essence of Chinese culture and benevolent rule. He goes on to talk about the existence of the ROC proves that ethnic Chinese can tread this path to freedom and democracy. He continues on. This is the one that upsets me the most. Our dance, our music, our drama, our visual arts, our motion pictures and television command high international acclaim and are reflective of a Chinese culture with Taiwan characteristics. This is from his January 2011, 100th anniversary of the founding of the Republic of China. This is, to me, the most offensive statement that he makes, because it's a pure denial of the reality in Taiwan that this is a Taiwanese society. He has, of course, most recently, do you want to say anything?
伊今年踮咧元旦宣言的时候，伊讲着讲，咱的舞啊，咱的舞蹈，咱的音乐，咱的戏剧，咱的艺术，拢是中国的文化，但是有台湾的特质。Dr. Roger 是讲，这是感觉伊上较无法接受的想法。伊讲马英九一直咧否认咱有一个台湾的文化，甲有咱的一个国家。
And of course, more recently, Ma Ying-jeou said we must refer to China as Dalu, as the mainland, and we must. He's giving an indication that I've come back to 1982. That it's 1982 again for me when I first came in here, and that the people of Taiwan accept the mainland concept in some way, that they are part of this mainland that has been divided. In short, the survey on the survey data shows that Ma's statements are inaccurate, right? And we're going to look at some of the ethnic identity statements as well coming from the college students. So this is the typical asking the question, are you Taiwanese, are you Chinese, or are you both? Are you into me? And so of course we see very high numbers of Taiwanese, very low numbers of Chinese, and significant numbers of both Chinese and Taiwanese in this, and this is very common. One of the things that causes complexities or complication for Taiwan is this, right? To say "doshu," what does that mean? How can you be both? I was saying earlier, I'm Irish, Scottish, Czech, Polish, Ukrainian, American. And my family is Catholic, Russian Orthodox, and Jewish, and now Buddhist, and Taoist, I think.